Okay, welcome. This is Bruce Buxton, and this is the Graybeard Live. It's a live stream that happens every Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time. And as you can see, I'm joined by a good-looking guy from Redding, California. This is Kalib Sumter. Sumter. I always want to put a P in there.
Everybody does.
Oh, I'm sure. And Kalib is a cloud infrastructure architect for Critigen, and I think we're going to have a blast today. We're going to enjoy talking together. Kalib, when we were preparing for this, I had gone out to make a posting for LinkedIn, and I found the picture of that bridge in Redding. Tell the viewers what that bridge is.
Oh, sure, yeah. So it's a Sundial Bridge. It's a architectural landmark that was created, I don't know, probably 10 years ago here in Redding, California. It's a functional sundial, and it's made. It's really beautiful. It's got this kind of glass walkway, and goes right over the Sacramento River. It connects the Sacramento River Trail, which is a pretty, for outdoorsy folks, it's a pretty long trail that goes all the way around the area and kind of culminates right there. There's a nice shop there where you can, get some food, gift shop, stuff like that. It's a little touristy thing.
That's awesome. So you're saying the footpath across the bridge is glass?
It is, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and the original design was actually see-through glass.
Yeah.
But then they realized that people could go under it, and they ended up making it to where you cannot see through the glass.
The perverts could go down below.
Yeah, exactly right. It was a little upsetting. So
unintended consequences, right? That's amazing. Well, yeah. Hey, we already have a couple of guests on today. We have Mike and James. And James, this is going to be a good one for you. You're going to like this one because James works for West Virginia American Water, and he's a GIS hand of all kinds. But I think he likes infrastructure. And so we're going to be talking a lot about cloud infrastructure. It'll be a lot of fun for you. They go back to that bridge. That bridge has a really cool architectural feature. So you were saying that the path goes all the way around Redding, or a good part around Redding. Like how many miles would you say?
Oh boy, that is a fantastic question. I should probably know. I think it's maybe 5 miles, the trail.
All right.
Something like that. It might be longer, it might be shorter. I'm really not sure. I have not gone down the whole trail myself. I've taken parts of it.
I love the way that cities and municipalities put together, recreation spaces. I love it when a city or town does that. That's just the coolest thing.
Yeah, it was a really, really great addition. There was a lot of kind of blowback because it was expensive. It was designed by some Italian designer or something like that. It was pricey, but I think it's certainly paid off for the.
Very cool. Very cool. So I don't think my listeners would not know this, but like Kalib is like, we're the same vintage. I think we're pretty close to the same age. He's got 4 grandkids. I've got 5, we're just right there in the same spot, but he doesn't have as much hair as I do, but it's certainly a lot better color than mine. So he belongs to the Graybeard Club. It's just that he can't muster a gray beard. So
I'll work on it.
You'll work on it. Okay, that's good. All right. Well, one thing I wanted to touch before we got into cloud infrastructure, one of the things that's interesting is we talked, you and I, you didn't get here in a straight path. Like you didn't graduate and say, I'm going to be a cloud infrastructure architect, right? You did a few different things. Why don't you just tell the listeners, tell the viewers how you got here? You started out in gaming, right?
Yeah, I was actually an accountant. I worked for a video game company called Sega in Redwood City. This was in the early 90s. And I did that. I worked in accounting for about 7 years. I moved back to Redding about, that would have been 94, 95, Redding, California, where I live. And I switched careers because I've always been an IT guy. I've always been into computers since I was little.
Right.
And so then I, switched to IT work, and I've been kind of working in that industry for a lot of years. And I come to GIS from an IT background, as opposed to a lot of folks who work in GIS gain an IT background, having worked in GIS and maintaining their infrastructure and so on.
How do you you said that to me the other day. How do you think that informs you? Like, How is that special for you and when you do your work? You're coming from GIS to GIS from an IT background. Tell me how does that inform your work? Like, is that the basis for your work as a cloud infrastructure architect?
I think the main difference is the fact that, just like any skill you have, if you have worked in it in a lot of years and you get a lot of that kind of foundational knowledge, from a GIS perspective, if you asked me some foundational GIS questions, I would not be able to answer them accurately.
Right.
I could from an IT or, network infrastructure perspective. So I think that might be the main difference, is that, and a lot of these, cloud technologies are intentionally designed based on previous on-prem technologies, and they're called the same thing and they function the same way. And so basically having that foundational knowledge has made it a lot easier to work in the cloud environment, because, the technologies are basically the same. So
okay. All right. So before we dive into the cloud or fly in the cloud, whatever analogy you want to use, I just want to say thanks, James and Mike, for kind of weighing in. But if you're watching and you haven't put your city or your town where you're watching from in the comments, please do that, and then we'll be able to know who we're talking to. And then also, if you have a question about anything that Kalib's talking about, you're more than welcome to ask it. We'll do our very best to answer that question. So we're going down that road of, Kalib did something really special, I think, in our company, that he helped to put the GIS infrastructure at scale in one of our enterprise projects. And that's kind of starting to become his specialty. So maybe you could talk about, just if there's someone that was watching that they're used to working on-prem, and here comes the cloud, GIS on the cloud. What are the opportunities, and why would they consider using GIS in the cloud?
Sure. Yeah. I work with a really great team of folks who have helped, migrate some of these larger customers to a cloud architecture and make it scalable and all that. Generally, I think a lot of folks, when they're dealing with on-prem system and considering what are the advantages or disadvantages to moving to the cloud, I think the number one concern that most often comes up is security. The advantages, and we could talk a little bit about that, but the advantages to using the cloud, there are several. Accessibility is one of them, because, for instance, if you're dealing with Azure, AWS, Google, IBM, any of those cloud providers, they have been doing this for a long time, and they have a lot of infrastructure built to support your applications. So in addition, in the old days, if you had an infrastructure on-prem and you needed to add another utility to it, or you needed to add another jurisdiction, or you needed to scale up, it would usually require you to go out and buy some hardware. That would cause, some additional maintenance fees. You'd have to have your IT folks monitor, maintain and control those systems. In the cloud, it's not exactly non-existent, but that's deeply lessened by using a cloud platform, because your cloud provider provides a lot of those services. I think a common misnomer is that they provide all of them, but there's still a certain amount of your own work that needs to go into maintaining your cloud platform.
Right. So in that movie, there's a video on our website that Kalib did. It's called Elastic GIS. So talk about the infrastructure considerations, how you configure GIS in the cloud. Just talk about how you do that, and how easy it is to scale up and down.
Yeah, so that's, again, one of the main advantages to using the cloud is that
the cost advantages to that as well, right?
Yeah. The main advantages to using the cloud are that you can kind of infinitely scale. You put your application out there, you can add as many resources to support it as you need, virtual machines, additional RAM. If you have to add additional services, it's really easy to do that in the cloud. You don't have to provision anything. But basically, an enterprise GIS platform at scale in the cloud can be very expensive if you don't plan it, and kind of build in safeguards to protect you against those kind of, exploding costs. Because again, you can infinitely scale, but you're going to infinitely pay for it as well.
So wait a minute. I'm hearing. Well, I want to make sure I heard you right. I think one of the benefits of being in the cloud is that you can manage your costs. But I think what you're also saying is if you don't plan it correctly, your costs could eat you up. Is
Absolutely.
that correct? Okay,
absolutely
so talk about that just a little bit then.
Sure. Yeah. So, so when you're scaling out into the cloud, you have all of these different technologies available to you. You've got all these different machine sizes, and you can, like I said, scale, and, till your heart's content. But you're going to pay for all of the resources that you put into your infrastructure. So the idea behind this elastic GIS is that you take all the resources that you need, you build your resources out, and in most cloud platforms and in most subscriptions to cloud platforms, you only pay for the resources that you are currently running. So if, for instance, you have a series of virtual machines that are assigned to your ArcGIS enterprise application as ArcGIS servers or something like that.
Okay.
And you need to scale, and your load does not warrant. Let's say you've got 20 ArcGIS servers. You're not going to want to pay for all 20 servers to be on 24/7 because you don't need that. Your load is never going to, or will not likely warrant that. So what you can do is you can build in technologies that allow you to scale back resources that you're not currently utilizing based on the load. So you can turn off services and spin down servers and dynamically spin them up again when the load warrants. And that saves a lot of money in hosting fees based on just not having your infrastructure running 24/7.
So when you say build out, are you talking about a specific, like a third-party application? Are you talking about code that you create as an administrator? How do you build that automation out into it so that it spins down and up as you need it? How do you do that?
Most of that is custom code that we developed internally, but there are, like, for instance, the Citrix tier. If you move your GIS to the cloud, one of the issues you're going to have is that you want your thick client, like ArcGIS Pro, for instance, if you're running Esri Enterprise and you're connecting to manage a utility network or something like that, you're going to want your client applications to be as close to your data as possible, just like you would in an on-prem system. Okay. So you probably have a series of virtual machines in your cloud infrastructure that are Citrix or remote desktop VMs that run Pro. Now, Citrix, if you're using Citrix, and that's why I mention it, is because they have a product built into their Citrix Cloud and their Zen Desktop suite called Autoscale that basically does that for those machines for you. So it'll track based on the number of connections to the thick client, the people who are using Pro. It'll automatically spin up resources to support the sessions as the load increases. It's kind of a new technology that came out about a year ago that has been very beneficial, because the other thing is that when you're using those Citrix VMs or you're using Pro in the cloud, you're going to want to have a GPU-enabled virtual machine. And GPU-enabled virtual machines are more expensive than other virtual machines because they've got GPUs assigned to them. So having that power management for your Citrix tier or your client tier is going to save you a lot of money.
Yeah, well, it sounds like that you've kind of got a handle on this. I don't know what else to say about that, but I really like the concept. I like the concept of like a hands-free sort of spin up, spin down, pay as you go kind of thing. And it really makes the cost of that network a lot more manageable. Right. Mike just put in the chat a link to that video that we have on our website, Elastic GIS. Steve and Mark, thanks for joining us today. I didn't say, I don't think, well, I guess I did. Please ask questions. If Kalib says anything that you want some clarification on, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Kalib, let's kind of take a step back. You mentioned early on in your discussion that a lot of times when people hear the word cloud, they hear, insecurity. They hear, I don't feel secure. My data is not secure. I don't know if I want to be in the cloud or not. And so if you say GIS in the cloud, I imagine that kind of tickles a few people in the wrong way. So tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are about cloud security and about how secure a system like this could be.
Well, the reality is that a cloud system can be as secure as your on-prem system if you design it that way. In fact, most of the same, when you have an on-prem system, you'll have a series of firewalls and routes that are available, VPN, things like that, that are all, used to protect your client data, to protect your internal data from, hackers and, bad actors. So you've built an infrastructure that does that. The truth is, most of that same exact infrastructure is available in the cloud. If you've used a Palo Alto firewall or VPN connectivity on your on-prem, there's probably a virtual appliance in the cloud that will do the same thing. So, it is a common thought amongst especially utility companies and large GIS users that they're exposing themselves by moving their data to the cloud. And the truth is, you could be if you do it without planning for security. But the reality is, though, you could theoretically, if you wanted to, and we've done this in a few instances, you can design an infrastructure in the cloud that is completely firewalled off from the rest of the world, from the internet. There's no external way to connect to it. The only way to connect to it is through a designed route. Say, for instance, your on-prem route, an express route, or some dedicated telco connection to your cloud provider, or a VPN connection.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that there are no external endpoints that are internet facing. The only way to connect to that is through VPN or your defined route. So it can really be, you can use it as an extension of your on-prem system if you design it that way.
Right. Why
go ahead.
Well, go ahead. No, finish your thought, and then
I was going to say, the truth is, though, you'd really want to plan that out, because the reality is you probably don't want, because it's called forced routing. If you take all of your traffic from your Azure or AWS workspace, when it goes out to the internet, you're probably not going to want to route that through your VPN connection and through your outgoing, company internet provider. So you might put a little more thought into it and design some of the security features into your cloud infrastructure that would make you feel comfortable opening that up so that you're not force routing everything through your on-prem system.
Yeah, when I teed this up for you, I was thinking, I can't tell you how many people before the pandemic you heard a lot of, well, our data will never be in the cloud. That'll never happen. And I suppose a lot of those people or companies have had to eat their words. I suppose that there's just a lot of movement into the cloud that wasn't anticipated. Why do you suppose, like, when you explain it, it seems to me like that the security protocols are such that if you just design it correctly, it's not any less secure than an on-prem system. That seems to be the message. So why do you think that persists? What is it about the cloud that you think that feeling or that thought persists, that means insecurity, or that's an insecure system?
Well, because you're taking all your data and you're putting it on somebody else's servers. I mean, that to me feels insecure. The idea that you're taking your client data, your customer data, and you're putting it on somebody else's equipment, somebody else is managing it. Mm-hmm. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't go turn it off if you get worried, that sort of thing. But the reality is there are a lot of there are these providers, their reputation is based on the fact that their systems are secure. We, as cloud architects, can still make mistakes that would make our data insecure.
Right.
But the actual fabric of your cloud provider is secure. So you don't necessarily have to worry about somebody breaking into a warehouse or a data center somewhere and pulling out a hard drive and having your customer data. They've got lots of very well documented security procedures in place that cover their cloud infrastructure.
Well, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Their entire reputation definitely relies on them being secure. Adam here, I think Adam's from San Diego area. Again, I spoke a couple of times. He says our warehouse is more secure than our clients' networks. And I think that, I'm sure that you're right. I'm sure that that's the case. So think a lot, maybe clients don't have the security protocols, and your warehouse probably relies on having a good secure reputation. So, let's go back just a minute. Are there special considerations? I'm going to put this up so that if you're watching and you're not looking at the comments, you can look at the link for Kalib's video. What are the special considerations with GIS and the cloud? Like, is there fundamentally anything different about using a GIS system in the cloud as opposed to using it on-prem?
I think one of the main ones, and this isn't just GIS based, but it's kind of high performance, big data based, is the fact that, and I kind of alluded to it earlier when I mentioned Citrix and your client tier, and the fact that, most of these systems, if you're connecting, this is a lot of data that you're talking about. If you've connected to a GIS enterprise geo database that has, thousands of features in it, and you are trying to access that using a client application running on your desktop over the internet, you're going to have some latency issues, and you're going to have slowness in the application. I think one of the main things that you have to plan on is that bringing your client closer to your data thing that I was talking about. The idea that in addition to your platform itself, which would be your ArcGIS Enterprise and your ArcGIS servers and portal and all that stuff being hosted in the cloud, you're also going to want to put some client machines in there as well. And you're going to want to run those machines using something like Citrix or Windows Virtual Desktop, something that you're connecting remotely to, so that only your keyboard and mouse clicks and video is going over the internet, as opposed to all of your assets and feature attributes and things like that.
That's a super good point. I remember you saying that in your video, and that just resonated with me. The only thing that's going across the internet are just the signals, just the clicks, right?
Right.
Yeah. Steve Roach commented. He's Steve. If you don't know Steve, he's the CEO of LSI. He says cybersecurity in the cloud. Our experiences at federal agencies such as the Navy, Army, and DoD, even IRS, are moving to the cloud, which shows the system can be secured. And it's opened more opportunities in our market to the cloud. Many argue the legacy systems are more insecure than correctly designed cloud solutions. Would you concur with that?
I would. And in fact, if you do have a client, if you have security considerations, say government clients, and you've got government data to be hosted, a lot of these cloud providers, they have government specific data centers that they've designed that you can provision resources for your government clients into, that follow the government DoD security practices specifically. So if you're ever really bored, you can go out and look at these cloud providers. They've got some of their security requirements and documentations out there that you can read, and all the different certifications and things that they follow. It's really intense stuff. And if you're a cybersecurity expert, it is difficult to justify maintaining an on-prem system as opposed to these cloud systems, because with the scalability and the accessibility and the additional security you can get, it makes sense to me that you would certainly look at the cloud.
No wonder we're hearing cloud all over the place these days. Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Before we quit today, this is just a short thing. This is 30 minutes. And so we only have a few things that we can cover, but I don't want to miss covering something that I like talking about. And that is when, smart guys like yourself, you're always, I find that you're always kind of, pushing the envelope, so to speak, in technology and working on new stuff. And that's one of the things I think is the coolest thing about some of our smart people is you guys are always out there just pushing ahead. So why don't you, I'd love for you to tell the viewers and the audience today, kind of what's out there in the future, what excites you, what is it that you see that is kind of related to your business, but it's kind of a future thing, and it's moving forward and kind of innovative. What do you see out there?
So I think for me, one of the most exciting things that is kind of on the horizon is there are basically container services for GIS applications. Like Esri has put a lot of work into using container services. I explained that whole model that we had to kind of manually build to power manage resources on the internet or on the cloud to save hosting fees, dynamically shutting things down based on the load. That's a cost saving measure. The reality, though, is that with container services, basically the idea is that you take your platform and you divide it up into smaller chunks, and you virtualize these individual microservices. So your data tier has a bunch of microservices, your web tier does, and your application tier. And you publish those all out as on a service like Kubernetes, or you design them in Docker, you can publish it on Kubernetes. And basically what it does is it gives you the ability at the microservice level of scaling all different parts of your platform. So your data tier, your ArcGIS server tier, your portal tier, by making it these virtualized pods of individual smaller services that can dynamically scale up as the user load requires it. And Esri, like I said, they've just really put a lot of effort now into containerized services so that you can run these Esri services on container services. All the major cloud platforms provide container services. So the great thing about it is that it's portable between services. You can kind of move your environment around if you want, but you don't have to design it from scratch like we did to scale it and save money. It automatically is built into the way that these microservices scale out. So it's really exciting, and they did a presentation about it at a conference a few weeks ago. I'm really looking forward to getting involved with that.
You say that this container services thing is new for Esri, but that's new for Esri?
It's pretty new for Esri, yeah.
Okay. Newish. Why didn't we go out and build our own? What were we that far ahead of the curve?
I think that we did it because it's very expensive to run a huge utility network in the cloud if your system is on 24/7. I think the idea is that we wanted to give options to. One of the other advantages, by the way, of moving to the cloud is that for smaller companies, because you're only paying for resources that you utilize, they don't have that front-ended investment in infrastructure. They can pay for it monthly, right? So they can accrue their costs over time. We wanted to give those folks a bit more of an opportunity to move into the cloud environment without having to spend a fortune on all these 24/7 services that they wouldn't utilize. That's one of the main reasons. And the Kubernetes thing, the containerized services thing, is going to help a lot of the small companies, the larger utilities, the larger companies, GIS users alike. So it's pretty exciting.
That's really cool. And that's neat to have that kind of forward looking on what you do, and that there is some development out there on the horizon. That's exciting. So can you think of anything that we shouldn't miss today that we may have missed? Anything that you wanted to chime in on that I didn't ask you about?
I would just say that if you're currently using an on-prem system and you're considering moving to the cloud, things that you need to think about would be your existing infrastructure. Things like authentication, things like, how are your users going to log in? Security is going to be a very important consideration, as we've talked about. All your systems should have multi-factor authentication. You should have some integration with your on-prem, user systems. If you can, just do some research, plan it out, take a look at the different cloud offerings, and ask questions if you have them. That's what I would say.
Yeah, well, we're always open for questions. You don't have to come and hire us to do a big project. If you want to ask a question, we can certainly answer those questions. And
that's true.
We have people like Kalib that can certainly answer them. So thanks, Kalib. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I want to thank those who came today and who watched. and who asked questions and or left comments. Adam and Steve in particular, thanks for that, and Mark, appreciate you leaving a comment there as well. Next week will be Thanksgiving Day. There will be no Graybeard Live because I'll be turkey stuffing and all the rest of that with just me and my bride here by ourselves. All of our little chickadees have left the roost, and they're all in different states. So it's going to be for us just to be all by ourselves. So but then the following week we'll have another special guest, and so look for us here Thursday, 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. And Kalib, it's been a pleasure. I hope you have a super end to your week, and let's talk again soon. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Bruce.
All right.